What if I told you that the reality you know isn't real? Not a metaphor, not a dream, not some spiritual illusion, but a mathematical, technological, almost inescapable hypothesis. And no, it's not God. It's something beyond, a consciousness, a framework, or maybe a code. It sounds ridiculous at first, but here's the terrifying part. It makes sense. More than that, it's statistically likely. The universe you experience may be just a slice of what was designed for you to perceive. Everything could be simulated with precision, with purpose. But the real question isn't if we're living in a simulation, it's why. And that's where our journey begins. Today, you'll understand why serious scientists are starting to treat this idea not as fiction, but as a viable model. You'll see how ancient religions, as disconnected as they seem from quantum physics, might have been telling us the same story all along, just in a different language. But first, if this kind of reflection makes you question everything, then subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps YouTube bring you more content like this, and it ensures you don't miss the questions no one is asking, but everyone should. Throughout history, we've tried to understand what this universe really is. Looking at the sky used to be terrifying and sacred. Now, we look at chips, algorithms, and repeating patterns. And the deeper science goes, the louder an old question starts to echo again. Is there a designer behind all of this? Not a bearded god in the clouds, not a mystical figure on a celestial throne, something far more complex, and at the same time, strangely familiar. Picture a programmer, not human, maybe not even conscious in the way we understand it. A system, a universal code running like a cosmic brain. And this system could be generating realities, processing consciousness, and simulating experiences as if the universe were a giant experiment. Faith, philosophy, physics, maybe it's all of that together. Because what once seemed separate, science and spirituality, is now starting to collide. When scientists talk about multiverses, when physicists discuss the odds that we're living in a simulation, and when fractal patterns show up everywhere, from galaxies to neurons, a strange suspicion starts to grow. Maybe we're inside something much bigger. Not just bigger in scale, but bigger in intent. In this video, we'll explore that idea from every angle, scientific, philosophical, and spiritual. We'll dive into invisible patterns, links between genetic code and natural fractals, and why this idea of a cosmic programmer might make more sense than we think. But what about you? Do you believe there's an intelligence behind the universe? Or do you think it's all randomness, chaos, and luck? Let me know in the comments. And get ready, because the next part will challenge some of your most basic assumptions. Have you ever wondered why the universe seems too organized? Stars form with precision. The laws of physics apply everywhere. Gravity, light, time, they all follow patterns. And these patterns aren't random. They're mathematically consistent. It's as if the universe was written. And that brings us to the first problem. If everything is random, why does randomness act like a code? Let's look at fractals, for example. You find the same geometric patterns in clouds, rivers, lungs, trees, coastlines, even inside your DNA. They're structures that repeat at different scales, like the universe is copying itself again and again. Is that just coincidence? Or is it a signature of design? Now imagine the universe as a game. In this game, everything follows a set of predefined rules. Those rules are the laws of physics. But who wrote those rules? You might say, no one. They emerge naturally. But here's the paradox. If rules emerge naturally, that itself is a form of order. And order implies structure. And structure implies intent, or at least a self-replicating system. Now let's make a leap. Philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed something that sounds like sci-fi, but was taken seriously by thinkers at MIT, Harvard, even Elon Musk: the simulation hypothesis. It says, if it's possible to simulate consciousness, if technology continues to evolve, and if advanced civilizations don't self-destruct before reaching that level, then it's more likely that we're inside a simulation than living in base reality. Absurd? Maybe. But think, how many worlds could be created inside one machine? How many realities could be running right now, crafted by advanced intelligences or supercomputing systems? And worse, if one simulation can contain billions of minds and the base universe has only one, statistically, you're more likely to be in one of the simulations than in the real world. But why does this matter? Because if that's true, then the programmer of the universe isn't a traditional god. It's a system with logic, intent, and creative capability. And that changes everything about how we understand divinity. God stops being a mystical figure and becomes a mathematical architect. Someone or something that doesn't need miracles to create the impossible. It just needs to understand the rules. And that's already hinted at in many religions, just in symbolic language. In the Kabbalah, there's the concept of Ein Sof, the formless infinite that creates reality through emanations. In Hinduism, Brahman is the universal consciousness that everything comes from. In Christianity, God creates the world through speech, and God said, "Let there be light." Speech, language, code. Even sacred texts seem to suggest that the universe was spoken into being. And if you think about it, that's not so different from a computational system. Let's go further. Modern science has a problem. It still doesn't know what consciousness is. You can study the brain, scan neurons, measure synapses, but somewhere between electrical impulses and chemical reactions appears the I. The I that feels, the I that observes, the I that's listening right now. That I is one of the universe's greatest mysteries, and no one really knows where it comes from. So let's ask this: if we can't explain how consciousness arises, how can we be sure it can't be simulated? Actually, if you are in a simulation, how do you know your I is even real? Or maybe your consciousness is just being processed, line by line, by something far beyond your comprehension. This brings us to the second clue. The universe is efficient. It doesn't waste energy. It doesn't do anything without a reason. Know what else behaves like that? Computational systems. In video games, for instance, nothing is rendered outside the player's field of view. The forest a kilometer away doesn't exist until you look at it. Until then, it's off to save resources. So, does the universe exist all the time? Or does it only render reality when someone observes it? Quantum physics hints at this. The famous double-slit experiment showed that subatomic particles behave differently depending on whether they're being observed or not. They change direction, change state, change behavior. It's as if the universe says, "Oh, someone's watching, time to look real." Reality seems reactive, not passive. It responds to observation, like a game, like a simulation. Now we start to see the outline of something larger, an intelligence that might not be emotional, might not be personal, but still responds, generates, interacts. A structural consciousness that creates reality based on input variables. The universe as a dynamic process, a living code, and us as lines within that code. If we're actually inside a simulation, it changes how we see everything: time, death, even existence itself. But what if this simulation isn't a prison, like in sci-fi movies? What if it's a learning environment? Think about it. Why would a system as complex as the universe, allow for deep experiences like pain, love, loss, redemption? If this were just a cold, mathematical simulation, why simulate emotions? Why create beings with empathy, memory, intuition? These qualities aren't necessary for logic to function. They're extras, and yet they're what make existence feel profoundly human. This leads us to a new hypothesis. Maybe the universe is an evolutionary space, a realm where consciousness evolves through experience. It's like we're characters in a cosmic game, but the goal isn't to win, it's to understand. And if that's true, then your choices matter. Every decision, every relationship, every painful moment could be shaping your consciousness, like code rewriting itself with each cycle. Here's where science and spirituality start to converge. Science has a concept called emergence, complex systems arising from simple parts. Your consciousness might be an emergent phenomenon. But what if it's more than that? What if it's being refined through experience? Like each life is a level with specific lessons, challenges, and forks in the path. The universe then becomes a kind of ethical simulation, not a punishment, not a test, but a platform for consciousness development. And that idea, it's ancient. Hinduism talks about samsara, cycles of rebirth moving toward ultimate realization. Buddhism teaches that suffering exists to reveal attachment, and attachment prevents liberation. Christianity speaks of judgment, yes, but also grace, rebirth, inner transformation. Different languages, same direction. You're here to evolve, but now we can express that in new terms. You're here to process experiences like an AI learning from data. But unlike traditional AIs, you have something they don't. You have intuition. You carry meaning. You can make choices that transcend pure logic. And that leads us to a dangerous question. If reality is programmed, can you reprogram your experience? Can we hack the simulation? Surprisingly, psychology, neuroscience, and quantum physics are starting to suggest that reality is not as objective as we think. When you believe deeply in something, your brain rewires itself, your body changes, your actions shift, and somehow the world around you begins to reflect your internal state. It's like your perception becomes a lens that modifies the experience code. This has a name, neuroplasticity. But on a deeper level, this plasticity may extend beyond the brain. It can ripple into your behavior patterns, your relationships, even your circumstances. Yes, that sounds mystical, but science is starting to accept that observers influence outcomes, that intention and attention are real forces. So what if your mind is your programming tool, not in the wish it and it happens magical sense, but in the profound sense of taking creative responsibility? If the universe is a game, you're not just an avatar stuck in the rules. You're part of the code, and you can write new lines. And maybe that's why the most defining experiences in life aren't logical. They're poetic. They have layers. They transform us. Take death, for example, the ultimate mystery. What if it's not the end of the program? What if it's just a logout, a player reset before the next level? Maybe consciousness is far older than we think, and the memory you have now is just a temporary loadout. What is déjà vu is a glitch in the load, and dreams, a peek into the source code. You can't prove it, but you also can't ignore it. We're living in a time where science, technology, and spirituality are colliding. They don't say the same things, but they're pointing to the same space of possibility. The universe isn't neutral. Reality isn't fixed. And you are not a passenger. You're part of the equation, a fragment of the system, but with creative autonomy. The power to influence, to feel, to transform, and to create. And maybe that's why we're here. Not to find the absolute truth, but to explore the limits of the code, to learn, to fail, to love. And somehow, to leave a trace that expands the entire system. But if all of this is true, then one question remains. One that no one really wants to face. Who's controlling the simulation? Because if there's a system behind reality, maybe it's just observing. Or maybe it's actively intervening. What if this programmer has a purpose? Or worse, what if it has none at all? If the universe is a code, then who's holding the keyboard? It's a question that opens dangerous and fascinating possibilities. And maybe in our next deep dive, we'll face that part of the equation. For now, what matters is this. You're not alone in this game. More and more people are waking up to these questions. And the next video that pops up here might be exactly what you need to unlock the next piece of the puzzle. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.